Hi everybody, my name is Caroline Nicholson and I'm the module lead for critical analysis and investigation of practice on the apprenticeship programme. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time just going through what the module entails, what apprentices can expect from this module, what the assessment covers and the group work that we will undertake. So the overall learning outcomes for critical analysis and investigation of practice are that apprentices will be able to identify critical incidents from practice and provide opportunities for significant learning. So I'll spend a little bit of time shortly talking about what we actually mean by a critical incident. The second learning outcome is to be able to utilise critical feedback and previous learning to improve knowledge and skills. And finally, be able to critically apply social work knowledge when appraising social work dilemmas and research mindedness. So as we go through, you'll see how the learning outcomes are covered within this module. As well as the learning outcomes, we've got the knowledge, skills and behaviours for apprenticeship. Now, this module particularly, there is no issue in being able to evidence pretty much all of the knowledge, skills and behaviours, but what we do within this module is encourage apprentices to really think about at the end of each session how they are demonstrating their knowledge, skills and behaviours, so they get used to that, looking at what the domains are asking for and being able to think, yeah, this is how I've evidenced that through my practice. So just as an example here, I've picked one knowledge, one skill and one behaviour that absolutely are met throughout this module. So K11, that experiences and feelings affect behaviour in interactions. Skill, being able to exercise professional curiosity, that is at the heart of this module. So every session when we're critically thinking about areas of social work practice, we're expecting apprentices to be curious, to be able to think, well, what else? What if I approach this in a different way? Is there a different perspective that I could take? And B3, commitment to continuous learning within social work and curiosity and critical reflection. So as the title says, this is a critical analysis module. So we expect apprentices to be developing those skills of reflection, being able to think about how they continuously learn and improve in their practice. So some of the things that we cover on this module, we really start with thinking about what do we actually mean when we talk about reflection, when we talk about analysis, and what are the different models of reflection that we can use. So we know that social workers perhaps are used to particular models of reflection, or particularly that reflection is talked about a lot in terms of having reflective conversations, reflective sessions, but really starting at that starting block of thinking, what do we actually mean by reflection, and what does that mean to individuals? What does that perhaps mean to groups of apprentices? What does that mean for organisations? So that we can really be clear in terms of how we reflect and what that looks like for individuals. So we know that there's lots of different ways that we can reflect, and there's perhaps better ways to reflect at certain times. So really recognising that kind of learning can take place throughout somebody's time within a practice experience, but also beyond that. So looking at the different ways that we can reflect depending on the experiences that we're having. And that absolutely reflection is not a standalone event. So we're thinking about how do we continually learn from our experiences, the experiences of others. We spend time thinking about language. So language is key in whatever module we're talking about within social work programmes, but really thinking about the use of language and how that can impact on how we reflect and how we analyse a situation. The use of language can kind of really impact that. Alongside that, thinking about bias and assumptions that we may have, and having that opportunity to be able to kind of really critically think about our own practice and think about, well, what bias did I have? What assumptions did I perhaps make in that situation? And how that has impacted how I see and experience a situation. In doing that, we think about lots of examples. So we'll be looking at lots of kind of media articles, we'll be looking at different things that are headlines that everybody will be familiar with, but thinking about how what we bring to that situation impacts on how we see and experience it. So really asking apprentices to unpick their bias and assumptions that they may have. And finally, a key thing that we do within this module is we look at practice learning reviews. So we have got an abundance of learning reviews that will give recommendations for future practice, and we'll look at things that have perhaps gone wrong or needed to be responded to differently, and really look at those kind of key moments of social work practice and think about what happened, how did that happen, what could be done differently. So really kind of action-packed, but lots of kind of creative discussions that we have throughout this module, where apprentices are kind of actively involved in the teaching sessions. So a big proportion of the module is apprentices working in smaller groups. Now, we recognise within the apprentice group that as adult learners, there is a lot of knowledge in the room. So we have people from children's experience, from adults' experience, and what we really hope to do within this module is for apprentices to see and embrace the knowledge and experiences that they have, and how they can learn from one another. We know, certainly I know from kind of practice, it can be really easy to kind of focus on case planning, and when we talk about reflection, we then start talking a lot about case and what happened, and kind of then what happened next, and it becomes at times about the process, or the focus is less on us as the individual. So within the groups, what we really want to encourage is that the focus absolutely is on the practice of the individual that's presenting something. So it's based on their learning, it's about their development, and the experiences that they have had, as opposed to what the outcome was for a particular situation that they were working within. One of the things that we do really intentionally within the group work is that we mix the groups up. So it isn't that apprentices are within small groups of apprentices they perhaps already know or that they work alongside, because we really see the advantage of having groups with people from adults' perspective, children's perspective, from different organisations and localities, because what we want to do is really encourage that kind of that challenge, that professional challenge, and kind of thinking about, well, I don't quite understand that because that's not my experience, and that really encourages people to kind of unpick and explain and understand themselves how they've approached situations. So the feedback that we've had across the previous modules when we've run this program is that that's really helpful to get those different perspectives. Another perspective that we're really keen to kind of capture within this module is involving service users. So apprentices will have the opportunity to, within a session, to work alongside a service user, that they will present something from their practice, and they'll be able to kind of share their reflections in terms of what happened and what they did and where their learning is now, to obtain that service user perspective. So we welcome and really value that opportunity for apprentices to share that and have those open conversations with various different service users. So in terms of the assessment task, and this module very much is kind of running up to that assignment task throughout, because as you'll see as I talk in a second, we have the group work that feeds into this assignment task. So the assignment is a 3,000 word assignment, and it is a reflective summary of an issue, piece of practice, and an opportunity for them to utilise feedback from their peers. So apprentices are asked to share and investigate an issue or piece of practice from their practice experience. So it doesn't have to be something that's currently happening. It could be from a previous experience, but something that's been a key moment that they wish to be able to unpick and reflect on with their peers. And in their reflective assignment, they will be making links to relevant theory, thinking about their skills, thinking about their experience, and really holding on to the ethics and values and anti-oppressive practice within social work. So I'm going to explain this a little bit more as we go through. So some of the examples of critical incidents, and what we kind of make very clear at the beginning, is it doesn't always have to be something that didn't go well. It could be something that went really well, and somebody wants to be able to reflect on, actually, why did that? Perhaps somebody was surprised that it went well, didn't expect it to, or they were caught off guard. So it doesn't have to be a really big incident or something that's went horribly wrong. It's something that has made you kind of pause and think, actually, I want to understand that a little bit more and unpick. So it absolutely could be something that an apprentice did really well and they were perhaps proud of. It may be something where an apprentice thinks in hindsight, perhaps that was the wrong decision, or I had to change my perspective, and wants to unpick some of that. Perhaps they've recognised themselves that there was something that was influencing their thinking that led to perhaps a wrong decision. Really big one to kind of recognise and think about is sometimes that it can be really overwhelming. We don't always get it right. We don't always know what to do. So that kind of overwhelming feeling in practice of perhaps not knowing the decision that we need to take. Some of it may be confidence. There's been apprentices that have talked about confidence with other professionals, or kind of speaking with professionals that perhaps they perceive to be in a more position of power and lacking that confidence to speak up. So that could be something that is discussed. And various other things that are there. Something that perhaps made you feel quite angry, an emotion that kind of overtook within that moment. Perhaps you didn't get on with somebody that you were working with, or you kind of struggled to build a relationship. So it can really be anything, providing the focus of the discussion is on the apprentice. So at the beginning, we spend lots of time kind of unpicking what examples, and certainly apprentices will have the opportunity to talk to me about what they're thinking of doing it on. And as long as it's not focusing on the outcome for a service user, and the focus is much more on them and what they did and what they could do differently, then that's absolutely fine. So in terms of the conversations, then as I've already said, we split people into smaller groups, and each apprentice will have the opportunity to present whatever their scenario, whatever their situation is, to their smaller group. We will have introduced by this point reflective models, so apprentices will have the opportunity to kind of focus it and structure their conversation around a reflective model, and that is of their choice, and they will be presenting that, thinking about what part of this is it that I would like some feedback on, what is it that I would like to open up to the group to discuss. And as a group, they will then have that reflective conversation, and they will think about providing feedback to that person that has presented. So every apprentice will have a dedicated 1 hour for their situation that they want to discuss, and be able to have that conversation. So every apprentice will go away from their 1 hour with some feedback, having that reflective conversation. We spend time thinking about kind of developing as a group. So we want groups to own this process. So groups perhaps will come up with their own reflective questions. They might come up with their own feedback template. So very much groups own this process. And what we see from doing that is that apprentices really buy into feeling that they are key within that. They're not passive in that process, and they really value and welcome sharing their ideas and experiences with others within the group. And finally, just to say that this module links really well to the practice experience. So if we think about the module SW2312, this is the consolidation of practice module. And there's lots of kind of things that link really nicely from this module into the consolidation of practice, where people are on their practice experience, doing observations, reflecting all the time on their practice. So absolutely, having two modules like this really complement each other, and recognise that reflection is continual. It's not a luxury to have time to be able to reflect and unpick your practice. It is a necessity within social work practice to make sure that we're kind of making the right decisions throughout all of our practice. So things that we cover in this module will absolutely help with the practice experience and the reflective work that you do there, and the observations that take place. So lots and lots of kind of things that will complement one another. So hopefully that has given a brief overview of this module. It's a really action-packed, lots and lots of discussion, lots of kind of generating thinking, challenging, thinking about things from different perspectives, and not just taking on face value the information that we've been given, really unpicking and thinking about, well, why is it that I felt like that? What is it that I could do perhaps differently? So hopefully that's been helpful, and I am happy to answer any other questions. If anybody has any, feel free to contact me, but hopefully that's given you a brief overview of this module. Thank you.